back on Old Blue again, our project CJ7. And let's just say mistakes were made, and I made those mistakes. So we'll get to talk about those today and the direction we've got to head now. So if you've been watching the previous videos, you'll know that we were working to get out of what I was calling phase one, essentially getting this Jeep to where we could drive it around and really see if there's other issues with the transmission, transfer case, all that other good stuff. But we actually had done that. And I say had because, well, now we're back into phase one. I had gotten this Jeep and we had drove it probably about 15 miles just driving around. Actually, I was really happy because it drove pretty decent. Engine was good power, ran all right, but we still had some issues with timing and the carburetor, stuff like that. So what we did, we went to rebuild the carburetor. We rebuilt the carburetor, no issues there. We went to deal with our timing issue, and if you watched some of the other videos, our distributor was a large cap HEI distributor. The keyway on the distributor was broken. So we put a small cap distributor into it, HEI, new coil. And then we proceeded to catch the Jeep on fire. So we did get that on video though. We'll go ahead and play that video here and I'll explain what happened while we did that. All right, so what happened is, as I mentioned, we were doing that HEI distributor. I just rebuilt the carb. When I was putting on the distributor, going to install the coil, I dropped the coil and it hit the ground. I picked it up, looked at it. I did see that the insulation was cracked on the coil. Looked at it, said, oh crap, got to get a new coil. But I put the spark plug wire from the coil to the cap on there. I said, well, it covers it up. So I'll tell you what, we'll go ahead, we'll roll with this for now, and we will see if we can at least get the Jeep timed. Also, since I just rebuilt the carburetor, I was like, I better put a fuel filter on this. So we put a fuel filter on this. Of course, I mounted the coil just to the right of the distributor, the back of the engine. The fuel regulator is right next to the brake booster there, master cylinder. So I put the fuel filter right after that, essentially right above that coil, well, a foot away from the coil. And then I proceeded to apparently not tighten one of the hoses tight enough and turned on the fuel, and fuel went everywhere. Got that fixed. Of course, I turned around, was like, well, we'll just fire it up. And that led to what you're seeing. So I guess we should go ahead and let's take a look at the carnage that caused. Okay, well, most of the carnage, of course, occurred back in this area. You can see mainly right in there, all the wires coming out of that connector there, where that bulkhead fitting was pretty toasty. This, I think, is the main power wire. Yeah, it's toast. I'll have to redo that. The wiring for the fuel pump, I know, is shot. Part of it, a lot of these wires here, I don't think, and this Jeep is terribly wired. Yeah, terribly. I knew I was gonna have to redo all the wiring in this Jeep anyway. So, I mean, if anything good comes out of this, it's gonna force us to address the wiring issues maybe a little bit sooner than I planned, but we should be able to do that because a lot of these wires, like this one here, was not connected to anything with its already 3 splices, it looks like. I mean, who knows? There is a couple of rogue wires down there. Maybe one of those was actually touching on something as well, and it could have sparked. Maybe it wasn't, because I mean, right down there is, oops, let me get the camera in the right plot. Right down there is the coil. I mean, yeah, and it's pretty well down on there. So it could have been that one of those other wires actually sparked, because I think there was 2 or 3 wires hanging out down there. You can kind of see some of the wiring woes that we already have. So right now, yeah, an extra wire's just clipped. And then another thing I've noticed as far as the wire goes, oh yeah, this is the, oh, it's nice, it's painted in. Yeah, there's the wiring for the tail lights. It's basically just your standard trailer wiring, loom, or what, not loom, I guess, wiring harness ran back there. So another thing I noticed is that, oh yeah, we'll talk about that in a second. Of course, they did use the CJ fuse block. We've got an old CJ fuse block, old glass fuses in there. So in the end, I think we're going to end up having to buy a harness for this anyway, a full harness. But like I said, today our goal is to, we'll evaluate, we'll probably cut some things back, and just try to get it back to where it's going again. All right, well, I think the first thing we've got to do is we've got to get all of the dust from the fire extinguisher out of here, because I honestly don't want to be messing around in it. I'm sure it's not the healthiest thing for you, and get that vacuumed up, maybe push it outside and wash some of it out too, once I get most of it vacuumed up. Now you saw that we had some on the inside. So as I was putting the fire out, I was trying not to put a ton of the extinguisher on it, because I knew how big a mess it was going to make. So I used it a couple times to get the fire out, and I noticed it was still glowing. And I look in the floorboard there, and there were some leaves and things there, and there's a little bitty spot on fire. Of course, how things were going, I had fire extinguisher in my hand. I just sprayed it in there instead of just maybe putting it out. That would have been smarter. Well, but whatever. It is what it is. So I'll get this vacuumed up. What we're going to do then is we're going to go ahead, we'll probably pull the carburetor off, pull the distributor out, pull the spark plug wires out. We'll have to do some inspection on distributor. Hopefully it's not melted. I did buy a new coil already. Then we'll have to evaluate all of the hoses for the fuel pump, go right through that area. We'll take a look at those. I can see my pressure gauge is a little warped. So yeah, chances are that probably doesn't work anymore, but we'll get that all torn back out, and then we'll bring you in and we'll see what it looks like at that point. All right, well, taking a look at some of the components, we'll start. So the coil, now there's a big chunk out of it. Before, what we had was this chip here and then the crack right there, and I don't know, there was a lot of, that's all melted there. So I guess it probably expanded and cracked more and popped off because the chunk came out with the spark plug wire. The distributor doesn't look too bad. No distortion. You know, I don't think from about here on, looks like wire's pretty well melted. The cap, again, same thing. A little bit of discoloration on the back side, but Not distorted. Carburetor looks fine now. In here though, any of the exposed wiring back there pretty well melted. A lot of the wiring in the loom actually is pretty good, even where the loom pretty well melted completely off of it. Now, looking through this, there's several issues already. This is the power wire for the fuel pump, or maybe for the fan. It runs up to those switches. Those are all connected direct battery hot. No relays, nothing. Full power for both the fan and the fuel pump just go through the switch. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to do a few things. In this loom, I think there's only really 2 wires that's needed. So I think we're going to pair this back to the other side of the, where the fire was, clip those off, get them capped. Because really, when you're capping wires, you really probably should put some heat shrink over them, kind of like this here, but on the end of the wire, so that you kind of cap that off so it can't touch anything. So I'm still not sure. Obviously we had the coil issue, but I found several wires that might have been powered that could have, like, I don't even know what that was to. Oh, we also melted, of course, our oil pressure sending unit hose off. So yeah, that'll be fun. Anyway, going to pair that back. Go in. I think I'm going to go ahead and probably have to order a auxiliary fuse block with some relays. Really want to put the fan, the fuel pump, that stuff on relays. I don't want the full power running through that switch. Also, I want to get it to where it's keyed hot, not battery hot, because forget to turn it off and it's going to sit there, just run. So anyway, let us, I think we're going to go out, try to clean this up some, get some more of this stuff on. We'll get that fuse block on order and then be back.
All right, well, we got everything washed up. Really not much more to say. Did clean up, didn't find anything new really, but we did certainly make some decisions. And it's been actually a couple weeks since we shot that last segment there, because we had to wait for some parts, because we went ahead and just decided to go ahead and put a whole new harness in it. The reason being is that I'm gonna have to make a bunch of changes to the wiring, and right now, basically, if I didn't put a whole new, I was gonna end up probably putting a whole new harness in it anyway, just because of that rear wiring, because I know that it is just gone. The fuse block doesn't look good. It's all corroded and rusty. It's the old small glass fuses. So also, I'm a painless performance distributor, so I was like, kind of silly not to go ahead and just buy a harness. Now there's a couple flavors of harnesses you can get for the CJs from Painless, and you've got the what they call the customizable harness here, 75mm, 22 circuits. Basically means that it's it's not terminated on the ends. You kind of see here, maybe if you look at that picture, you got a bunch of terminations that you got to add versus the other version, which is more of the plug and play style harness. Now we have a lot of customizing we're going to have to do, because we're on a YJ frame and we're using a YJ fuel pump. Well, not actually, we aren't. We're using a YJ tank, so we have a sending unit. But anyway, got a lot of modifications we have to do to it. And it's of course a lot cheaper to go with this. And we've done a lot of these. I think the last big harness we did was in a '69 Camaro from American Auto Wire. Made every single termination on that one, so it's not really that bad if you enjoy that kind of pain. So anyway, we'll take a look at that more in a minute. Now we did, as I mentioned, went on the Amazons. I've never used one of these, so I cannot tell you. I can already tell you that the fuses up here don't stay in, which is kind of interesting. The only thing, and these aren't very expensive. I think this was like 30, 40 bucks. The only thing I noticed with this is it came with no kind of instructions or anything, so I'm going to have to, and it really, might coincide, but looking at it just briefly doesn't give you anything about, hey, this one is for that relay, this one's for that relay. Yeah, and then of course we got some new battery terminals because we're going to go ahead and just redo the wiring. We're going to have to, like I said, anyway, we're going to have to do that just to get our lights and stuff so we can be closer to legal, which is probably a good idea. The other big decision, also going to replace all of the fuel hose in it. A lot of the fuel hose, of course, under the hood got pretty hot, so I'd say it's compromised. Yes, we're not going to just mess with it. Just going to go ahead and replace all of that. So let's take a real quick look here what we get with the painless harness. The classic braid, I actually probably will purchase some of that for some custom projects, but on this one we'll just be using the standard plastic braid because we got tons of that loom laying around. So as I mentioned, you just get a ton of crimp-on connectors. This is our connector for the column, which I may have to replace the column. This is the alternator bag. You know, you got a little, what I call a maxi fuse, more like a mini maxi fuse. Then we've got, this is basically the from the firewall forward portion of the harness. What's really nice about all these, you know, when you get in wiring from either painless or like American Auto wire, every wire is labeled, which is actually honestly makes it pretty easy. Just a little kit. Honestly, we typically don't use a lot of these because we like to use either the heat shrink connectors for making the end terminations, and we use a lot of the instead of butt connectors, we use a lot of the solder connectors. And then of course we've got our main portion of the harness. They do have some terminations already made, which is nice because that's the headlight switch down there, you know, so that's pretty nice. Yeah, so let us get into this. I think what we're going to do, how we're going to attack this, because, well, this side will be easy because it's really, everything is hooked to the alternator. They didn't run anything to the battery. So we probably got to pull the alternator off because we can't even really get to the stud in the back of it. Pull all that off, pull all the wiring back. For now, I don't think I'm going to mess with the dash wiring too much. Our goal for this right now is just to see if I can get you under there and get you to see some of the dash wiring and the mess we've got down here. Like any good CJ or older vehicle, our dash wiring underneath here is just probably a nightmare. I can already see butt connectors there. I can see some heavy speaker cable, which I don't even know if that's, people have used that for wiring in the past. In some of the vehicles, I can see some of the spin-on connectors. So yeah, that's going to be a mess. We'll probably go ahead, pull that, good Lord, looking at the ceiling, pull that wiring out. And, but for now, I have a brand new steel dash for it, but I don't know if I'm going to put that in just yet. My goal right now, I want to get it back to where it's running, and then 2, I think get the lights and everything working and probably deal with the column because I think there's a problem with the column. And then 3, yeah, maybe we'll go ahead and do the dash. I think one thing I'm also going to do is probably go ahead and paint the firewall because, well, we got all the clearance dents that they made that were pointless, and now we have kind of a, you know, dark mark there where we charged some of the paint. So go ahead, just, I think, paint that flat black. Right now, I'm going to get everything cleared off of it. Do that, and then we'll start building it back up.
Well, let me show you some of the mess that we found. And like I said, I'm glad I just didn't try to mess with this. The fuse block had actually cracked right across there. Someone glued it all back together. I had trouble getting it out because they had some square nuts on top of this. I ended up having to break that little piece off just to even get to those. Might be able to see how much corrosion is in there. They had, gosh, 6 or 7 additional wires plugged into the fuse block, going all over the place. Of course, this is the rear wiring for the lights, spliced in, Scotch locks added. Of course, a lot of additional butt connectors, and of course that mess there, which we won't even get to. There's the dash we'll probably end up using here in the future. A few things on the Jeep here we found. Found a big hole down here, so I'm gonna have to do some welding. We'll weld a patch on this side. I think we're actually gonna have to weld a patch on the firewall side and on this side here. There's a cavity in between there. We'll probably also patch this area up here where the clutch used to go through. But one decision I've got to make, and I've confirmed obviously this is a YJ tub, and I can tell that because there's usually right up here would be holes for the defrost on the CJs, because the defrost came behind the dash through the top piece here and into holes in the bottom of the windshield frame, and then of course came out the top of this bottom section of the windshield frame. YJs are different. They've got that plastic dash pad that kind of sticks out. The defrost is actually in there, so it's not in the windshield anymore. But we already know we need a new windshield. This frame is, well, not rusted out, does have quite a few dents, so honestly we will probably order a CJ windshield frame and go ahead and just cut those slots into that area of the tub. And but that's a ways off. Our first goal is just to get this back running, so I'm pretty much going to throw the wiring harness in it. The dash wiring I'm going to tape off and just zip tie up out of the way for now. We'll probably, well, we'll go ahead and work on the rear light wiring, so I want that to be able to drive it around. But for now, we're going to mainly focus getting it back, getting it started, getting it running again. So, well, honestly, so I feel a little bit better about it, because I was feeling pretty good that it was running. So, all right, let's go on. Well, we've started the wiring, got the fuse block installed now, and we're starting this out. The first thing that we'll always do is make sure that we get everything we're going to connect to at least roughly located. So for instance, we've got over there, we know we're putting the main fuse that comes with the painless system that this big red wire will go to. Then below fuse block here, we actually added our relay box, so this is where we'll have our fuel pump relays, fan relays, 4 more relays for, I don't know, whatever we're going to end up adding. Yeah, so get all this stuff located, and then we'll start to get wires routed, because really want to get all the wires routed before we really start hooking anything up, because we're going to want to make sure that we know where we're going to go and make a pretty good harness that's going to probably run across the engine. We're obviously going to run one, and since we a lot of times on our Jeeps remove the fenders to work on them, we'll run this headlight harness up the strut here, and then yeah, then start working on, I mean, kind of once we get all of this set up, the only wiring we've got to add that's going to kind of run in between the firewall, that's not going to go through the fuse block, is going to end up being the fuel pump. And we might, I mean, I've still got to look through some of these wires. There might be a wire to switch the fuel pump, but we're going to actually want to put the fuel pump on a switch. It's going to be ignition hot and come on with the ignition, but I want to switch that I can shut the fuel pump off, because if we're
working on the Jeep for some reason and leaving the key on, I don't necessarily need that pump running all the time. And it's not the kind of pump that would shut off when it sees pressure. So it'd basically just sit there and run and run and run. So we don't want that. We'll end up putting a shut off switch for it. But like I said, it'll probably always be on. And now we won't have to worry about when we shut the Jeep off, the pump will shut off with the Jeep. Whereas before, fan and the whole fuel pump, you had to manually remember to shut those off. So it was a bad deal. Anyway, let us get to laying out some wiring. Kind of tedious.
All right, I thought I'd show you what I'm doing with the wires that I'm not using. So the first thing I've done is I've identified what wires I'm not going to be hooking up. Like this here is the, I think it's one of the sending unit. Yeah, for an oil sender, we're going to be using a mechanical oil sender, so I'm not going to be using this wire. Don't necessarily want to get rid of it, so we cut it back so that it's going to be kind of in the main harness there, just sitting there in case we do ever want to use that. However, I do want to cap the end of the wire for a couple of reasons. One, if it has power in it, and we don't want, of course, shorting out to another wire. And I do cut these at all different lengths. I just don't take a bundle and cut them off the same length. Cut them back at different lengths. And then I'm going to go in and I'm going to put some heat shrink tube on here. But I'm going to do it a little different than I've seen other people do it. Right or wrong, overkill maybe, I don't know. So I've cut a little piece off that heat shrink tubing. And sorry, you're gonna have to deal with the drone of that gun. But now I'm gonna basically put this heat shrink tubing on there where there's a bit left after the end of it. Start shrinking it down. Get to the point where it starts to stick. And this is a lot of times what you're going to see if you've seen people do this. But then we do this extra added step. I actually fold that over, take the piece I just clipped off of there, run it over that, shrink it down. So now one thing with all these wires, I now know, since all of them are going to be capped on the end, that I'm not planning on using, that as I'm going and laying things out, getting things hooked up, if I've got a wire that's not capped, I probably have something that's not hooked up yet. But then again, if I've got wires that are capped, I know I can just get them up into the bundle and put them away. So now we've got to go across and start figuring out where we're going to start. For instance, a couple of these wires go to the coil. So we're going to have them dropping down basically right behind the engine, whereas a lot of the rest of them go to the starter and the alternator and different things. So they'll keep going around, head over to the other side there to the passenger side. Well, we're back. We made some progress. As you can see, we've got the engine harness pretty much squared away. Got all the cables, positive cables, ground, all the ground stuff figured out. We've got new clamps, can actually sort of tie the battery down now. So got that all sorted. Did run into a couple more things as kind of expected. And we did also, you can see our new coil mount back there. What we were doing, so we pulled the distributor completely out and kind of did that on purpose. One, since we'd had some timing issues we knew with this already, I wanted to force us to get it to top dead center and basically make sure everything was squared away. So we did. We put the distributor in, got it top dead center, and started looking at some things and noticed some things. One, you can't really see it down there. Our timing mark is off. About inch and a half. It's quite a ways off.
And I've verified that we are at top dead center. One, I can verify that a few ways. You can see that we can see the rockers now, and we're watching the valve train, and also checking that we were getting compression down there. And I even put a borescope into cylinder 1 there to make sure we are at complete top dead center, and we are still off a good inch and a half. So probably what has happened, I'm guessing, looking down there at the harmonic balancer, harmonic balancer is probably shifted. Chances are it's not. I mean, I'd hope it's the right one, but from looking at it, it has probably shifted. You know, it's not the timing chain, because like I said, we're looking just really at the crank, and not really comparing it to the timing for the camshaft. So the crank itself is off. So now that means that we're going to have to work on getting this squared away. So I think I'm going to go ahead, as much as I hate doing it, pull the front end off, pull the harmonic balancer off. We've already got one on order. I think I'm going to go ahead and pull the timing chain cover off too, just to look at that, just to verify, because with this thing, who knows? Now, the good news of what we found, if you didn't notice it already, is actually right there. Oh, I guess down there at the bottom of the screen. So these look like brand new comp cam roller rocker arms, which, well, as I said in previous videos, I was told this was supposed to be a built engine. You know, at least that shows that someone was doing something. Unfortunately, with the workmanship, I would hope that whoever built the engine was maybe different than who did the rest of the Jeep. But who knows? Yeah, we'll see. It does run well, and you know, going back to our timing issue, that timing issue down there and where that is off kind of coincides with what we were running into trying to set our timing in this Jeep, and why it was, you know, we were ending up just way advanced, because we were pulling that timing mark up so far and pulling it way past where, you know, it should have been to be advanced anyway. So now with this though, running into some issues, and I don't know if I'm going to address this whole mess here. If you haven't seen the previous videos, this radiator is zip tied in. You can see here, these big zip ties. It's not good, not good. We do have another radiator, we do have another grill that I can use. I will probably go to that grill, just because I can't bring myself to zip tie this back in once I pull it out. That's just, yeah, I can't bring myself to do it. So we'll probably be, actually it's, see if I can get camera around. Actually, that grill back there actually already has a Chevy 350 radiator in it, 3-core, I believe. And it's actually, unfortunately, I was in a hurry and I cut out these to get a fan up in there. So I'll just repurpose probably that fan there and just use that one, because yeah, we'll make it work. Maybe I'll just paint it black for now so it's not yellow and too ugly. We are going to end up redoing a lot of the body, but I really didn't want to get to that right now, because I mean, when you get into the stuff, it just snowballs and snowballs and snowballs, and we could let it snowball as far as we wanted. Now let's get a little bit back to the wiring here. You can see, you know, we did get everything tied up real nice. We've got our relay box kind of set up. We've got our fuel pump already wired. We didn't wire the fan, obviously, because we got to deal with that stuff. We haven't done anything with this here, because if we're going to do that grill, we might as well do that at the same time. One thing you might notice is this here. You might be asking what that is. Right now, we have our fan and our fuel pump wired ignition hot. So when we turn the ignition on, this here is going to start both the fan and the fuel pump. One of the things I did want to do though is, if I am working on this Jeep, because we're going to be doing lots of work on this Jeep, and needing to have the key on, I don't want the fan and the fuel pump running all the time. So I just added this I actually stole it from the current dash into here. Now, what I've done though is I actually wired this backwards from where you would normally. So normally that would be on, but actually that is off now because I flipped this around. That is on, so that way, you know, if this was on like this, I'd be afraid, you know, bouncing around and all sorts of stuff. It just kicks off. That'd just be kind of bad. So got that wired in so we can shut off the fuel pump and the fan if we so need to. So now I think I got to figure out what I'm going to do with the rest of my day. Maybe I'll go ahead and start tackling this. I haven't decided. We are going to probably forego doing dash wiring right now. We'll probably cover that when we go and replace the dash. So I'll probably just cap off all those wires down there, maybe just pull a few fuses, we'll see. I am going to go ahead, I think, and wire the rear so we got the lights and all that good stuff done. So I guess either today I got to figure out if I'm wiring the rear or pulling the radiator and everything out. So, all right. Well, so telltale sign that our harmonic balancer has shifted. So if we look at where the crank key is right here, typically our mark should be nearly in line with that crank key. Look at the new one here, and here's the crank key. Right about there is the mark to that crank key. This one though, here's the crank key. Our mark is way over here. So you can see it's shifted quite a bit. So, yep.
All right, well now you can see we've got rid of that old harmonic balancer. You can see we actually upgraded to an 8-inch harmonic balancer, which barely fit. We did have to grind just a little bit off that bracket there just to slide it on, but it clears that everything pretty well. Now, what we ended up doing, just to make sure that we are comfortable with where we're at with this engine, we stripped it all the way back to the timing chain, lined up our timing marks, verified top dead center so that we knew everything was kosher. Then we put on our harmonic balancer and checked our timing marks, and it lines up, you know, right where it needs to be. So we're good to go. Through this whole process though, we ended up now adding some bling because the old alternator, when we pulled it off, that stud on the back was stripped out for the main power going to it. So obviously end up having to replace that too. We also did a little Craigslist rebuild on it, painting up some of these uglier components. So now it looks pretty darn good. We still got to finish up putting our fuel system back in, putting the dash back in it, and then we will start working on our radiator here and the grill, and we'll probably be back to talk about that. All right, well, here goes nothing. Let's see what happens. Suppose everything is working right. We do not have fuel pressure. That's off.
Well, good news. We did some investigation on our fuel pump, and we were just out of gas. How we got out of gas? Well, that's odd because we didn't have it leak out. We just had a fire involving a bunch of gas, but it was all up here, so it didn't leak out. I don't know. Just must not been much in there, and I guess it has been like a couple months since then, so I don't know, maybe it evaporated. Anyway, now we do have a fuel pump. We have fuel. It is all working, so we're gonna go ahead, try this, see if we can get the fire out of it. I mean, way off. still got to figure out timing because I think we're quite a ways off still. Well, there you go. It's live again. Yeah, I feel a lot better. Honestly, it's been like 2 months since we had that fire, and been just trying to get some time to work on this when I could. So, and every time I touched something, it felt like I was taking 3 steps backwards and fixing the 3 things before it. So, yeah, good deal. Unfortunately, we're not done. We've got a lot more to do on this Jeep, but I can at least say we're done here, this portion and this video. We thank you for watching. I know this is probably a really pieced together one with how long we ended up working on this, but you know, good results. Sounds good, and hopefully now we can at least move it around the shop here and clean up around it because it's a bit of a mess. So anyway, thank you for watching. As always, a like and subscribe is greatly appreciated. Be sure to check out our other videos on Jeeps and rust repair kits and all sorts of other stuff. So thank you. Have a good day.